Hi, I have a quick announcement before we dive into today's episode. I've opened a few new spots for my 90-day program called the Inner Oasis, designed to help high-achieving women who are stuck in chronic stress and burnout to retrain their nervous system so that calm, sleep, and balance become their default, not a temporary break. I will be using a unique blend of sound healing, energy healing, and journaling. So if this is something you want support with, you can book a call at www.inneroasis.org or use the link in the description to get your personal 90-day recovery plan for free. Now, let's get into today's episode with my next guest. Hi, Dr. Amy Albright. How are you today?
I'm doing fabulously. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, you're coming for a second time. Thank you very much. We have more to say because last time we talked more about so we're gonna talk, maybe refresh people what you do. But last time we talked more about your program about elevating intelligence and connection, if I remember well, deeper meditation. That's really always interesting for me. Coherence and wisdom, and boost resilience, and open intuition, and unlock supernatural gift. It's always interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm trying to talk more about a woman and the fact that we always have a lot to do, we always burn out, and trying to find solution for getting a lot of stress relief. I don't know if the first time I talked to you, I was already a sound healer. I don't remember if because that was like maybe a few months ago that we talked. So now I'm a sound healer. I do also Reiki. So I'm helping more people to get a lot of stress release. And apparently you're always working on new things.
Mm-hmm.
So is there anything new in your program that could help with that?
Yeah. I mean, some of these things are just evergreen, right? So for the 23 years I've been in practice, I've noticed that people tend to be pushing too hard, working too hard. We can see that, any of us, as we look around in the world. But because I am there as a support, for some of my clients, they're executives, so I'm helping them with, coaching them in their career. For some of the people, though, in my career, at earlier in different stages, I'm also or even now, some of those same people are mothers. They're sisters, we women have a lot of roles, it seems like, because we in our society are the ones that knit things together. And we could say that that is like, oh, maybe that's part of the kind of the ways that we grew up, right? Which is true, right? Most cultures have that. Like, women are the providers of care. They're the nurturers. They're the ones that are going to make the food, most likely. They're the ones that are going to take care of the sick, most likely. And then now, since let's say 1980s or something, women are also working. And so when I went to school at university, I took a course in this, and they named it as the second shift, right? So it's like a full-time job to take care of everybody and a full-time job to have your full-time job. And so how does the math of this work out, and how did we end up here? So backing up, just for context for those that maybe haven't heard me speak before, I'm a doctor of Chinese medicine, and I have a specialty in neurosciences, not just in an abstract way, but I studied neurosciences as an undergrad. I later became a doctor of Chinese medicine. And then after that, I also ended up specializing in a clinical setting, working side by side with a neuroscientist to not only study, but to change people's brains and how they function in real time for different outcomes. So my understanding of the brain is not just abstract in that regard or academic in that regard, but actual seeing how people work. So inside of the context of that, something else that I want to add is that a woman's brain is built to be thinking about a lot of things at once. Right?
Why are we wired like this?
Like men. So on an epigenetic level, the way that a man's brain has been developed is to hunt. Right? In a lot of societies, it's like they pull back the bow and arrow and they're looking at the deer, and that's like the only thing they're thinking about. They're not thinking about, have the children eaten? They're not thinking about like all of the million details, because that's really their brain is designed to have that focus. And we can see some of that in a man's brain, because In the hemispheres of the brain, the two kind of those main sections left to right of the brain, there's a connection called the corpus callosum. And in a man, they just don't have as much connection between those two hemispheres. So that's why they will step over the pile of laundry to get to the remote control for the TV sometimes.
This is
I'm
so
being a little
true.
crude. I'm being a little crude. I'm just talking, I mean, but men literally we can't necessarily judge them. And I say this with love because actually so many of my clients are men and I love working with men. But for men, we have to help them to broaden their focus because typically they're thinking about hunting the deer, which is now about making the money or going after whatever their goals are. And it can be quite singularly focused, right? And so what does that mean? That could mean that the 5,000 other little details, if they're not able to hold that focus as our partner, our brother, our father, whoever they are in our life, because we as women have a very connected corpus callosum. So those two hemispheres are very connected. We're able to perceive multiple things. We're much more able to, and I'm speaking in generalizations that are not fair, of course, but overall women tend to be more empathic, more holding things from multiple points of view. So it makes us more of a natural provider in that way, like a nurturer provider. But also our brains are definitely organized, even in the visual perception, to see all of the details, right? So we walk into a room and like, why is this room upset? Why is all of this going on? Either there's discord in the physical environment, like objects where they don't belong, or there's people's emotions not like they should be, or there's things in whatever level that need tending to. And a woman's brain makes her more able to perceive that. So it's important just to keep that in mind, right? Like we perceive it. Now, does that mean that it has been delegated to us to do it? No, that's a whole different thing.
Exactly, because you just described my husband.
Oh,
You
yeah. Okay,
just
good.
described when you said like walking on top of the pile of
Uh-huh,
clothing on the floor, just
uh-huh.
going over it. You just described him. And sometimes it was like 2 days ago. I was like, didn't you see that was on the floor?
Right,
Because you just come back, you just went back and forth in the kitchen. That was on the floor. So should I
right.
just pick it up for you?
Right, right, right. And
Ah,
if you ask a man to, if a man's looking for something, they open the refrigerator door, they can't see what's inside the same way that a woman's brain can. We can't it's literally like their equipment is working differently, right? Their visual perceptive capacity works better if they stand back because they're used to looking at things in a distance, like where's the deer? Versus a
no.
woman's brain is where are the berries? I'll pick all the berries. I'll weave all of the clothing. I'll tend to the children, which are right here, right? We hope they're right here if they're little, right? So it's like, where'd they go? So it's, for a man, if they're looking for something, the instruction would be take a few steps back so that you're 5, 6 feet away from the refrigerator and suddenly you can find the thing you're looking for. Right. So there's a way. So all of this is, I'm kind of playfully, we're having this fun conversation about men and women, and we're being generalists. And it's not fair to say all men or all women, right? There are plenty of men who nurture or can find a thing in the refrigerator single handedly, or like this is all, but it's, it's helpful to just have a bearing for how did we end up where we are as women? How do we end up so burned out? Sometimes we're the only one that literally can see it what it is that's needing to happen or what's really going on here because we just have sensors that are built that way through our visual or other perceptive abilities. And that doesn't make men wrong.
Does it
Yeah,
go also with the multitasking? Because I'm always multitasking. I'm always doing like 3 things at the same time, but he can't. If he's doing the dishes, he's doing the dishes. If he's cooking,
that's
he's
right.
cooking. But he
If
cannot
he's
go,
hunting the deer, he's hunting the
he's
deer. If
hunting
he's
the
doing
deer.
the dishes, he's doing the dishes. That's what he's got. And if you give him 10 more things to think about in his
Oh,
working memory, it will
yeah.
crash him, right? He gets overwhelmed. But if you write him a little list and you say, when you're done with the dishes, will you look at this paper? And he's like, oh, okay. And then he can maybe do that because he's not being asked to think about and pre-plan. A woman
Hmm.
is unloading the dishwasher while she's strategically planning how to pack the lunch, get the kids to school, and what she has to pick up from work on the way home.
I
This
know.
is not how a man is wired to work, right? But it doesn't make them wrong. It just means that we have to know how to work with them, right? Because if we assume that they're like us, then it's going to lead to some disconnect.
Well,
Yeah.
I wish I've known that, earlier in my life, what you just said, because it sounds so okay now so normal now and so obvious now that the way you described it, I'm gonna share that with all my friends.
Good, good.
And this way we won't yell at them no more.
That's right. That's right. I learned some of this from a woman named Allison Armstrong. I took some of her courses many years ago, and it ended up deeply influencing. I felt the same way when I started to really understand about men because we think that we understand each other. Here we are, we're cohabitating, we're raised by men and women. We have, we're like it's all of this, and then it turns out that we're not the same, right? So so, but to come to how is it that women have burnout? I think we put so much on our plates inadvertently because we don't know how maybe to work with our partners or inside of our communities in that same way. And we have often this feeling of a burden of responsibility that comes to be the caretaker, the caregiver to the people in our lives, whether that's coworkers or our own children or, whoever it is, our parents. Um, and so I think that one of the main things that I would love to offer is just because you can see it doesn't mean it's yours. When we see it, it gives us the opportunity for leadership, right? Because maybe somebody else doesn't see it to the point we made. Maybe they see it, but they don't know how to address it. Maybe they see it and they have an emotion instead of knowing how to take action. Or maybe they see it and they've decided it's not important. And maybe we need to decide it's also not important, right? Because,
So
like, for instance, if
mhm.
something in my house, I can be such a neurotic, clean person that it can be hard for me to focus on anything else. How could I possibly start cooking if the kitchen hasn't been cleaned from the last meal?
I know,
It's
I know.
I can't think around it as well, right? But does it have to be meticulously clean, or could we just put the dirty dishes in the dishwasher and then begin? Right? Or what's the right scale of things that has to actually happen here in order for us to work well inside of our neurology? Because some of it is hangups and some of it is real, right? Like if there's too much clutter, it can be hard to see where'd I put the carrots, right? You can't find them inside of the countertop of things, right? But where is that right line? And a lot of the times I think that we, especially for women, we tend to live inside of a lot of shoulds because often we were placed in a position of having a feeling of a burden of responsibility for adults when we were children or for things that were not fair for us when we were young. And so we have this default to running inside of an invisible template that's saying, "Oh, everything is my responsibility," even if it's not. It may not be important. It may not be ours.
Sometimes I do contests with my own, I guess, with my husband to see how long that's gonna take him to see that pile of things or to get rid of this in the living room or whatever, or in the bedroom. I'm always losing because he just don't see it. And I think he can stand, mess longer than I can. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, it's been a
Yeah.
few days. Okay, we're done here. I'm gonna take care of this. But now I understand better. Yeah, no need to
Right.
to do a contest with him because I'm always gonna lose.
Right. Exactly. You will likely lose in that battle because also it's costing you something every moment that you're in it. Right? Like you're measuring, you're wondering, you're checking, then you're rechecking. Did the thing get done? Did it not get done? And then you're resenting maybe at some point, and then now that costs everything inside of that costs. So then what I would say is that as women, we instead of engaging in that sort of a game, what if we instead come from this place of, okay, we need to change how we're doing laundry around this house.
I just did actually. We just
Oh yeah.
did recently
Good.
because couldn't take the complaint anymore, and he's gonna do his own laundry.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
I'm gonna do only my own, and the little one, the big one, is already doing her own laundry for a while now, and he's gonna do his own laundry. So I bought another
Mhm.
basket. We both our own basket,
Perfect.
and that's it. No more,
Perfect.
blah blah blah.
Right, exactly. So you're just doing your own thing and then you're gonna do for the
Yes.
little one, and that seems way easier, feels better. So but you're solving it up at the top level, and I think that that's one of the things we can exist inside of a pattern where we're basically reigniting our own anger, resentment, burnout, overwork. We can just keep going and going and going. 'Cause if it's not the laundry, it's 5 other million things,
I
right? Like,
know.
so there we go. So how do we then, instead of existing inside of that, take the understanding about what's happening and work within wisdom and leadership skills to be able to find something, and where we're not shaming anybody and we're not having to have there be conflict, right? Because some of us also, we don't want to have that kind of conflict. It's not pleasant to have conflict, but it doesn't have to be a conflict if we approach it from that right way. So being inside of that space where we utilize that information as a sense of empowerment, okay, there needs to be something different, and we come forward with solutions, and then the other person can also then rise up into, oh yeah, thanks for bringing this up, we do need solutions for that, right? In an ideal world, then by our serving in that way, then we can invite the other person into being their best versions of themselves as well. um so that's on a very, I mean, down to the very nitty gritty of how life happens. I think this is a huge tool, and it's not just with men; it's also with our sisters, our friends, our female
Yeah.
colleagues, everybody. Yeah,
Well, thank you for really explaining that. I'm really appreciate it. It really saved me a lot of work and
good,
time, honestly.
good,
So
good.
let's talk a little bit about you now, because since the last time we talked, you've been working on new things. So apparently you have new insight, some practical tools, maybe some inspiring stories that I could offer my audience about like a fresh perspective on living more intentionally, purposefully, and in alignment with your
Mm,
deepest truth.
yes.
So
Okay.
what is it about?
So I do work in a brain laboratory, but I think that the place that I'm more excited to share from is just um, the realization again and again that no matter how we get there, whether it's those conversations that reset us, whether it's, like I said, doing things directly with the brain, whether it's improving our own health, whatever it is, when we live inside of alignment, it's actually the most strategic and easeful and joyful reality.
Yes.
Right. And so we want to get into alignment in all of those ways. So laundry, great. That's one of them. Check.
No more yelling.
Yeah.
Check.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But also then, everything. And I think in order to really, really best and deeply align, I really want to encourage people to feel into what matters to them the most. What is it that they're the most passionate about? Is it about being a parent? Is it about some element of your work? And not that we have to choose, but what are those passions and what is the possible outcome that we could live into? Right? What is the legacy we wanna leave? What do we wanna be thought of after we're gone? Right?
Mm.
Right? And so that we're not aiming for small goals, because I think that's a thing that I'm really noticing, whether I'm working with people that are, have very high net worth, or they're in charge of big empires, or whether they're, having a smaller footprint in their life. Everybody that I'm interacting with in life, the question that I keep on coming to is like, what are we aiming for?
Mhm.
Because if we're aiming for slightly less miserable, marginally improved, I mean, do you see? It's like, oh, that's as much as we can get then. And we make these tiny
Yeah.
little increments towards marginal improvement or slightly better, versus being able to step back from the whole thing and say, what do I actually care about? And what is actually true for me? Um, Last night I was having a conversation with a leader who he was saying, he's having some challenges in his life and in his health, but overall things are good. But he's definitely, there's some things going on that he would like to have better. And then it came to this place where he said, well, I think that I feel heavy with responsibility right now. All of the emails, all of the
Mhm.
decisions that are waiting on me, all the people that count on me, that call me up and want advice, or that I'm supposed to be doing some part in some project for. And then there's family, all these things. And I think we can all relate to that feeling of all of those pulls. And so one of the things that I was saying in the space of that conversation is, look, ultimately the person that you're stepping into, either it's a yes or a no, each of those things. It's a yes or a no. And if you try to control what is or isn't yours to do at the level of the mind, you're fighting with your path. You're fighting with the divine. You're fighting with a feeling of upliftment towards what it is that is true. Because, like it may be possible to be able to organize one's life in such a way that there aren't so many senses of obligation,
Mhm.
right? But we've been trained to think that we have to have things feel heavy and obligated. So what if we just dump that all out and say, okay, maybe not, right? And maybe not try to control what is the right alignment, and instead ask what it is and follow the direction when we feel that clear sense of direction come through. But without the question, you can't come to the answer,
But
right?
sometimes, the thing will come to you, or it will sometimes you have some doubt. You can have doubt, is that really my path, or should I really do this? If it's really your path, that's what I think. If it's really for you, you're not gonna doubt it for a long time because it's gonna
Mhm,
be so obvious. But
mhm.
some people could be very scared, when the true alignment is finally, coming through, because it can happen to you so late in life sometimes. It can happen to you when you
Totally.
almost retire from your current job or you do something else. I mean, for me, it happened to me, I'm in my 50s now. And now I know really know what I'm supposed to do here. And I could have been like, no, I'm not going to start this new thing.
Yeah, but to have the courage to lean in when you're getting those whispers. And if
Yeah.
there's a sense of uncertainty, then you just recognize that, right? So it's kind of like taking in that which is in our surroundings. It could be laundry or it could be inputs. Right? Inputs like, "Oh, it feels like I'm feeling pulled this way, but I'm also noticing if I'm pulled this way, and then I'm ignoring this." Rather than trying to just push all of it away or, "Never mind, I won't have this topic of what am I to be doing next. I'll just stay on the hamster wheel in total pain and misery and suffering, but I'll just stay right here, keep doing the same thing."
Ugh.
Right? So that's not a really good recipe for success. So instead, it's like, okay, I know that we have to, by the way, I'm working inside of the principle that we all have responsibilities and life keeps moving forward. But how do we internally stop and really take deep record of what's going on? And if we don't get a clear signal, then how do we ask for a deeper signal, right? How do we experiment in a direction and see how that feels? That's a separate idea. So how do we then begin to test so that we can change things? Because if we're too afraid to look, then we're going to be too afraid to achieve it,
That's a good one. That's a good,
right?
yeah, one to remember. Do you incorporate this in your program? Because last time I talked to you, we talk a lot about neurofeedback.
Mhm.
So is that something you work on now with um, your clients? Because I remember you said neurofeedback it's like having an elite personal trainer for the brain.
That's right, that's right.
And that,
Yeah. So to catch people up in case they didn't hear that episode, neurofeedback therapy is taking sensors. So there's not an addition of any electricity or anything into the brain. It's just simply measuring the electricity that's happening inside of the brain in the neurons. And it's sensors applied to the scalp, sensing the brain, that information goes to a computer, and then the computer is feeding it back to the brain essentially via either sound or sights and sound at the same time. So definitely people can believe whatever they want to believe about themselves, and I'll say, yeah, absolutely. People will say, "No, no, I'm great. I'm not stressed. I'm doing the right things." And and meanwhile, everybody in their life is like, "Whoa, they really could stand to calm down." Right? Like they don't know how to they don't know how to unplug, right?
I
And
know
maybe
some
they
people
know,
like that. I know some people
yeah.
like that. Yeah.
And they can convince themselves that they're not miserable, that's just a little stressed, they're fine or whatever. But then we look in at their brain and we're like, "Oh, do you see this red thing right here? This right here? This means that it's too much, right?
Mm.
This means that there is a lot of overworking, there's a lot of fight or flight stuff going on. This means that you're overthinking, specifically about how you're thinking about yourself or the way that you're scanning the horizon, which looks different, right? Looking
So
for scanning for danger versus looking for oneself." Mhm.
when you see that, do they have to be in an intense, how would I say that? Would they have to be like in a weird mood or in this intense, what's the word?
Like an episode of something really bothering them kind of a
Yeah,
thing?
when you
Mhm.
look at that, because if they just come to see you one day and then kind of calm, are you going to see that in the brain? That, oh, this is red and this means that you're doing too
It'll still
much.
be there. Yeah,
It will still
it'll
be
still be
there.
there. They could look completely calm and feel fine in
Yeah.
that moment, but we can see the evidence of their brain still going, 1,000 miles an hour, but no, but they haven't left the garage, right? That's how my colleague says. Like, they look like they're just sitting there at an idle, but they're not,
Wow,
right?
this is unbelievable.
Yeah.
Wow.
So in terms of burnout, it's really amazing because we kind of benchmark to what we know. Right, so if we're
Mhm.
benchmarking to, "Hey, I've always lived inside of fight or flight," I've always been under a traumatic amount of stress and pressure. In fact, when that happened when I was a kid, and then it kept on going, and then I took care of everybody and I did all the things, and now, and the things that we're worried about might have changed over time, but that pattern inside of the neurology hasn't necessarily changed. And it goes beyond what the vagus nerve is doing, and it goes beyond what the amygdala is. This is a very complex situation. The brain is extremely sophisticated and complex. I mean, if you think about it, it's
I
helping us
know.
to perceive our reality in every moment, to
Yeah,
respond to our reality in every moment, running every organ in our body in every moment. It's pretty amazing, right? What's
great
really
machine.
going on. Yeah, incredible. So, when we look at burnout, and we see a lot of folks coming through with burnout, because who do we work with? People with very, 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 very big goals, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah, so a lot of those folks have an element of burnout that's running in the background. And so, ultimately the burnout that's there, the difficulties or the overthinking, the overworrying that is there, it's hard to argue it when you see it inside of the data. Most of the time, not in joke, but really in truth, most people already do know it. But it
yeah,
is kind of an eye-opening experience to see it. Oh, there's that. That's how I feel, and they have a map of it, right? They've got it on it's color coded, and I'm watching how my brain looks. Wow, right?
yeah.
So, I think that it's really important because we think that we can just get there with mind over matter, and forcing ourselves to continue forward. And we can in many ways, but there's a cost underneath, and that cost can really impact our lives in a huge way. So, just across the board for those that are experiencing any kind of burnout, but also just for those of us that maybe have habituated to burnout, just taking into account, like, how have people always lived, starting off as hunter and gatherers, and how did they live, like, really through time, right? Back when we were all maybe farmers, or the
Mhm.
different eras of the human experience, and really being able to understand that we're way outside of the thresholds of what we have been able to evolve into on a neurobiological level. And that really and truly our reset, I feel like 2026 is a huge reset year, not just globally, politically, economically, whatever, for at scale, but for each of us as individuals, right? And so how do we go through that metamorphosis? It's likely going to be by, to some extent, dropping down into taking care of ourselves as a mammal, because we are a mammal, right? And we have to take care of our body at a deeper level than what we realize, and as a part of that, living in alignment, because it does show in our nervous system, and it does show in ways that we can't know about ourselves, because if we've always been stressed, we don't know that we are not having that same experience of love and passion for life that we could,
I
because it's always
know.
been blocked by the stress.
And sometimes you have to wait for somebody else also to show you or to tell you, because sometimes you're in your, like you say, you're in the garage and you don't know what's
Yeah,
going on.
exactly. Exactly.
And hopefully 2026 will be a positive reset. I hope, because 2025 wasn't. I mean, I don't know for everybody, but for me it was like, it was like already like a change, like a lot of a new cycle started. So I'm just waiting to see what 2026 is gonna show me now. Hopefully, even better.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Well, and I love, something else that I've been really coming back to again, as far as, things that I help to remind people of, is that there's a difference between control and command. So with
Mhm.
control, we're trying to, with our mind, say what we should or shouldn't do, or how it should or shouldn't go. And this is right and this is wrong, and it should be this and not that. And it just creates a lot of rigidity and a huge amount of stress, conflict within ourselves at the very least, but likely conflict with someone else, even if we're just arguing with them in our mind, right? We're arguing with somebody in our mind. So much energy,
Oh my God.
right?
Tell me
So there's
about it.
another way to be. I know it's silly, but it's part of being human, right? And so there's this other way to be, where we can be in a state of command. And when we're in a state of command, we're not getting stuck inside of arguments. We're actually a little bit zoomed out, a little bit disengaged. We don't have to have all of this emotion pushing and pulling with other. If we have a sense of emotion about something, we allow for that emotion to change, to transform, to alchemize inside of ourselves cleanly. Oh, okay, I'm having anger toward that other person. Real time responsibility about that anger. Let's go ahead and release the anger in real time, right? Because otherwise we could recirculate that anger for the next 30 years in our own head.
Oh, I did for 7 years.
Yeah.
Somebody I was mad at.
Right. Yeah.
It took me 7 years
Yeah.
fighting in my head with that person.
And how much energy is that, right? And it's so human.
Too much energy. And that person wasn't even thinking about me, I'm sure.
Yeah,
Too
they
much
had totally
energy.
moved on, and then meanwhile,
I'm
here you
sure.
are. Yeah.
Yeah. And here I am like, I should have said that and it should have happened. You know how it works.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So when you're in that state of command, it's not that you don't have any emotion or that you're pushing it away, but you're recognizing that you're not the victim of that person. Right? And that you if
Yeah.
you decide to loop on it, you can loop on it, but that's not a commanding position, right? You wanna be fully empowered, and you wanna be able to change how that reality is going for you so that you don't waste that energy, so that you don't have that the poison of resentment inside of you in that way. So then you're able to take action when you're in that state because you're remembering you're not a victim, and you're remembering that we are also inside of a reality where you can change how you feel. You don't have to stay stuck.
Yeah. Not easy to do, but it's so good when you do it finally. Yeah, yeah. When you in command, it's true. I'm not in command to be able to change how you feel. It's like, because it's taking a lot of energy, like a lot of negative energy that you push into yourself and that just ruining your life. For what? After for what? Sometimes these people or whatever they don't even think about you.
That's
They don't
right.
even care.
That's right.
So
Yeah,
why do that to yourself? Yeah.
that's right. Yeah, and giving ourselves the time and the space to be able to do that process
Hmm.
and to be able to trust that it's important. It's more important than watching the next Netflix. It might be more important than taking care of somebody else. But really, right? Like we prioritize
Yeah.
Instagram or we prioritize
Yeah.
I don't know, running errands like a frenetic person over
Hmm.
that self-care of the thing that we're really pushing because if for instance inside of that loop for 7 years it was creating a lot of energy that was pent up. Now you want to figure out where to put that energy and you're not making necessarily the best choices,
Yeah.
right? You're
That's
doing
true.
whatever you're doing. So if we want to be really strategic and really timely about that so that we don't end up in that loop, which again is so natural, then getting down to the core of it, down to the core of the core of the core of it, which isn't just reinforcing in your head how much you hate this person or what they did wrong, like that's not what I mean. Because ultimately, if we live inside of that place that we trust that everything is serving us and that there was a lesson in it, then we ask ourselves, what is the lesson? And then
Mm,
deeper, the next level of forgiveness might even also be, I forgive myself for putting myself in that situation, right? And a lot of the
yeah.
times that one gets missed.
Forgiving
Yeah.
yourself. Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
I know. Yeah. Feeling guilty is so good sometimes, you know. You're like, oh, I know I did this for this. So bad. Yeah. Forgiving yourself. Yeah. So you was the
Power
last person who's forgiving, yourself. You was the last one being helped. So you forgive everybody, you help everybody,
That's
but
right.
you don't help yourself and
It's
you don't forgive yourself.
isn't that so on the pattern that we were talking about, right?
I
Like,
know.
let's take care of everybody else. Yeah. Right. And so what it feels like yeah, what it feels like when we finally forgiven all the levels deep is that there's a sense of well-being. When we attune to that person or that event, that moment in time, we actually have a sense of peace come over us, not a sense of, pain or anger or tightness in our body even, that our body might remember it. When you know that you've really released it all the way, it feels good, it feels relaxing, it feels easeful, and it's something that you don't think about anymore because it's no longer a big deal.
Yeah.
But if you were to be reminded of it, of course you remember, but you can talk about it with laughter. We can talk about it, and I'm hearing that with your story, right? You're laughing about it. You're like, "Oh my
Oh
god,
yeah.
it's so ridiculous that I did that," right? Which is where we
So
get when we're on the
ridiculous.
other side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
remember this person, like years later, I saw this person at a wedding. And my husband was like, "So are we gonna say hi to this person? Because I know you're mad at this person." I'm not mad at this person anymore. I don't care.
Right. Right.
I thought I was mad, but when I see this person, I'm like, actually, I don't care anymore. So yeah, let's go say hi. So it's so weird, sometimes you having movies in your head, and then I don't know when you're confronting the reality, you're like, well, what was that about? It was so stupid.
Right. Right. And sometimes I'll look at, because we can have really egregious things done to us, so to speak, in our lives, right? So it's not like, oh, that kind of action is okay, but when we come to that place of forgiveness for that individual, what we can recognize is that to some extent they are an actor in our play. Wow, apparently I needed somebody to betray me really badly. Wow. Thanks for showing up for that job. That probably sucked on your side, right? Like, you probably didn't wanna be playing that role. I
Yes.
definitely didn't want this role on my side. Okay,
Yeah.
right? And so you can play with it from that point of view because
Time to rewrite the play.
yeah, exactly.
A new
Exactly.
ending, please.
Exactly,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay. I see what you mean. Okay. Yeah, it's a good one. Well, thank you very much. That was really I didn't think the conversation was gonna go there, but I really like it, you
Yeah,
know.
exactly.
I think it's gonna help a lot of women. That's gonna help a lot of women because we are
I
the I don't know, sometimes I think men they have it so easy. They don't have all those, you know, crazy ideas in their head. My husband sometimes is like, yeah, I don't talk to this person anymore. So what? It doesn't care. It's done, it's over. And yeah, I'm thinking about it for months.
right. He shifted his singular focus away from that to
Yes.
something else a long time ago. And I
Next.
don't mean
Yeah.
to make it too simple, but in a way it's beautiful, right? So we can be
Yes.
inspired by men in that.
So lucky.
And
Yeah.
again, I'm being very generalizing in this, but isn't that a beautiful trait regardless of who's
I,
having it,
I
to be able to
envy.
just let it go?
I
Mhm.
envy the way you let go of stuff and doesn't even. And now I know why, because you just explained it to me half an hour ago. It's just like focusing on something else. And it's like,
That's right.
I don't have time to think about that thing that's in the past, by the way.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And if we're really focused on where we're headed, what do we most want? What do we most value and care about? What is our legacy? It's not going to be how much did I hate on that person?
Yeah.
How much did I get freaked out about laundry? Right?
Yeah.
Like, these are all really small things, even though it can feel like a very large thing in a moment. But when we look over the span of our lifetime, or we look at really what we deeply value, it's not alignment with what that is, right?
It's
So
not.
it
Yeah.
becomes easier to be able to reshift that focus. And if we do tie it back to this topic of burnout, one thing I can say is that we end up carrying it is true, we've heard it maybe from a psychology standpoint, like the rocks in our backpack or like the burdens of our past. The past can really bog down how our brain is working. It bogs down how we perceive reality around us so that we keep on seeing more trauma, more betrayal, like all of these kind of things can keep coming up or whatever the themes are. But also it's just slowing down the mechanisms within the brain. So if we are holding trauma patterns, we see inefficiencies in the brain. Those inefficiencies, it's kind of like you're pouring gasoline in and it's pouring out the bottom of the tank, and then you're wondering why you're not getting great gas mileage or whatever, right? Like, these inefficiencies can add up to a huge sum total. But what happens in our brain is that we end up compensating, which is something also that I feel like that women have, and men, but especially I think women, because we can mold ourselves, we can be so malleable, we can read the room, so we'll be whatever the room needs us to be or whatever the job requires, right? And so there's ways that our brain does that as well. It's creating these workarounds that are not optimal, and it can be based on emotional baggage from the past. So when we in our laboratory, when we watch people heal up, because we can walk people through that in specific exercises, with the brain equipment on, we watch them heal up their past, we watch their brain flourish overall. And exactly how does it flourish? Well, it could be all kinds of things. It could be better connection, better empathy, more feeling of resilience, better a sense of joy, right? Just a lightness overall. And we're watching it on the data, and we're watching the person feel the feelings. Right, but and how did they get there? In this case, I mean, we do so many different things, but in this case, what I'm describing is just the part where we're helping people to let go of their past with ease, to come to forgiveness with ease. And it's incredible that it's not just the idea of, "Oh, the reason why you feel so heavy and burdened is you have all these rocks in your backpack from all of the hardships of your past. Just lay down the rocks." Like, it's a nice idea, it's a nice metaphor, but we actually see it in the brain, and I think that that's a very interesting and useful thing because it can actually impact even our cognition, the way that we think clearly or not think clearly at our desk or whatever, like that brain fog that might roll in. Is it
Mm.
something really wrong, so to speak, on an organic level where there's some kind of a problem with their health? Or is it that they have too much emotional stuff sitting right underneath the surface? right? And it causes a brain fog very easily. So of course, I'm not meaning to be diagnostic here. I don't know what anybody that's listening has going on, but it's so important to be able to recognize the power of releasing our past so that we can live without the burnout now, because it frees up our brain for optimal functioning, but
Yeah.
it also helps us to create a new frame for reality where we don't expect more suffering, which means that we avoid burnout by small decisions all day long. When we don't expect to suffer, we change our outcome.
You do that with the machine, I mean, the headset, what you're
Mhm.
using? You can do that? Okay, you can have that with them? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, in some of the deeper state work that we do, we have people have their eyes closed, they're wearing an eye mask, and there's
Mhm,
wires, like I said, onto their scalp, and the information is going into the computer, and the computer is helping them to drop into very, very deep, relaxed states,
mhm,
similar to the space between awake and asleep, so some theta or some alpha or both of those waves together, at a very, very higher peaks of waves. Like if you were at the beach, they would have higher, bigger
mhm,
waves, but
mhm,
also more beautiful waves. And when people get into that state, it's even more efficient release can happen
mhm,
because the brain is being held in this beautiful balance that is it helps it to do that better. Hmm.
mm. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Alright, well, we could, talk about that for, forever, I guess.
Totally.
That 3
Totally.
hours, episode podcast, but, well, thank you very much for coming back and explain more what you're doing, and today I'm very happy we talk about burnout, but women and the difference between men and women. Always interesting. We're learning
Mm.
more and more.
Mhm.
And I'm very happy what I learned today because I'm gonna be, less on my husband back, I guess. If he only does the dishes and doesn't do anything at the same time. Thank you very much. I'm gonna put of course in the show note your website and everything you're doing. The company company's name, sorry, is Holland. Do I
Yes.
pronounce it right?
Hold on. Hold
Holland,
on.
yeah.
Mhm.
And I'm gonna put everything on the website is where they can have a look and see what you're doing with the brain.
Yeah, sounds good. If anybody's interested, they can go see holonexperience.com. Thanks for
Love
having
it.
me on.
Thank you.
Mhm.